this is a really good time to start talking about some of the other basics with inside of jQuery, and that is handling arrays as well as conditionals. So I'm going to go ahead and just come in here and comment out the entire script tag that we've been working with. We will come back to it, but I'm just going to leave it commented out for a moment, and then I'll add in another script. And as we've seen before, we're going to do document.ready and function. There we go. So now we can work with some stuff in here, and it's just nice and clean for us to work with. Now, the first thing is I can, use numbers. So let's say, for instance, num equals to 1, 2, 3. And I can use strings. So strings equals to some string, or rather some string equals to some string. And then you can also use something for arrays. So some array equals to, we could say num 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, and so on. You can do all sorts of things with arrays. Cool. So I used a variable, I used actual integers, and then I put in an actual string. Now, an array, this looks a lot like a Python list, right? So in Python, the list would be that. Almost the same thing. The one difference here is how we actually name our variables. In Python, you would put underscore like that. In JavaScript and jQuery, you use camel casing, lowercase the first one, bring the letters together, and do it like that. Okay, so those are some data types. There is another one, and say is false, and say false or true. Notice that they are all lowercase. It's a Boolean. Some data types, not too big of a deal. So what I would want to do here is I want to actually iterate through this array, and I want to see if one of these things, can be divided by 2 and be equal. Let's just try it out. So to actually loop through things, there's a few different ways on how you can go about doing it, but in jQuery, you can use this item called each. So each is going to loop through your array. So you do $.each, the array name, and then you use the function method, curly brackets, and then inside of that function, there's 2 parameters that are passed by default, and that's the index and the actual item or the object that's inside of that array. So the position point is the index, so position 0, position 2 or 1, position 2, and 3. And that will actually show us, we will see that with console log, the index, and the actual item. So let's go ahead and save that. Refresh in our Chrome, and we see 0, 1, 2, 3, and then so on. Exactly as expected. Okay. So I had this idea of like, which one of these is divisible by 2? Well, actually, none of them are just by looking at it, but let's use some programming to do it. I'll say if, and then parentheses, and we'll do number. And I'm going to say, let's do number /2 equals to, or sorry, not number /2, but number modulo 2 equals to 0. Console log object is even. That's a very simple conditional. Else object is not even. Okay. So we'll save this and let's go ahead and take a look. We run it. 1, 2, 4 is even. 1, 2, 3 is even. 1, 2, 3 through 3 is even. And 3 and so on. And so on is even. Well, that's not true. Oh yes, the issue is we put num as our condition. What we want is object or obj. So this is modulo. That's basically saying, hey, divide this by 2, and then if there's nothing left over or whatever's left over is here. This is basically saying what's the remainder of this equation, and it'll give it to us. We refresh in here, and there we go. Now we've got is even, 1, 2, 4 is even, 1, 2, 3 is not even, 1, 2, 3 through 3 is not even, and so on is also not even, right? So the string is also not even. So modulo, that's modulo. Another way to look at modulo is to try it out on your own. So 10 modulo 3, what is 10 divided by 3, what's the remainder going to be? That would be 1. 9 modulo 3 is equal to 0. So play around with that if you're not familiar with those math concepts right now. But the reason I showed you that was really just to show you how this works, right? I can also chain conditions together by using and is false, right? So if it's divided by, or if it's divisible by 2 and the variable of is false, or rather is true, we'll say some bool. Let's leave it as some bool so it's not confusing. So some boolean, if that was true, then it would run this. So all of these should say false and or is not even. Refresh, and they all are false. And that's because of this right here. If I change it to true, we should get the same results we had before, is even, and then the other ones are not. So that's how you would chain those things together. And then finally, you can use something called else if. And let's go ahead and make one of these numbers divisible by 3. So else if obj %3 equals to 0, console log by 3. Again, obj, we're going to get rid of this other console log right now. It's divisible by 3. One of them is going to be, and then I'll also chain this together inside of here as well. Refresh. We've got 1 is divisible by 3, 9 is divisible by 3, and 1233 is divisible by 3, or so it says. So let's go ahead and take a look. 1233 divided by 3, and what do you know? It is divisible by 3. That was by coincidence. I did not plan that whatsoever. So that is how you loop through things, and then how you can do conditions in these things. Now, the reason I'm showing you this stuff is because what I want to do now is, add on to this overflow, but basically say like, hey, if any given item, any given paragraph is greater than a certain size, then I'll do the overflow. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it as it should be. So any given true height is there. And that's something that we'll do in the next one. I just wanted to give you a primer to understand that, yeah, there's arrays, there's Boolean values, there's strings, and all this, standard data types. But we can also loop through them, and we can also have some conditions in there for them. So if you have any questions on this, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.